briefly until then, and continue after that until 9:10 with the Tafseer halaq, inshallah. So we stopped at ayah number 7 last week, and I didn't really go through the full explanation of what they are, so I'm going to try and do that a little bit today, and then we'll build off the verses afterwards, inshallah, at the end. In total, we have six commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives at the beginning of Surat Al-Mudathir. And these are probably the first set of commands that were given to Muslims to carry outwards. Surat Al-Muzammil, the commands in it are for you to carry inwards. It's something you're going to do internally for yourself. It's going to be between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your time at night, in the time where you are resting from your long days of work. You're going to read the Quran and qum al-layl and udhkur isma rabbik and tabattal and all these other. So these 8 commands are intrinsic. They're for you. Something that you'll do internally for yourself at different levels depending on your connection, on your closeness, on your commitment, etc. But these 7 commands, these 6 commands, they're different. These are the commands that you're going to live by. This is what you're going to do as a Muslim. Like if you're sent out into the world as a Muslim, what exactly are you going to, what will make you different, or how do you stand out from others? What makes you unique? What are the unique characteristics of being a Muslim? And these 6 commands at the beginning are basically that, just giving a rough rundown of what it is going to mean to be Muslim. So قم فأنذر وربك فكبر ثيابك فطهر والرجز فهجر ولا تمنن تستكثر ولربك فاصبر. So technically 7 commands in total. So these commands, what do they cover? So if you look at what they cover, first of all, they cover an ethical, a social ethical perspective, al-qiyam, which is taking a stand, standing for something basically. Meaning, it's not enough just to do things. You also have to stand for something. That's really important. And actually that comes before anything you do. If I just give you a set of rules that you have to follow, but you don't understand what the overarching theme is, what the umbrella concept is, like why are you doing all this stuff, what exactly is guiding this behavior, then it just becomes a set of very mechanical, almost mindless tasks that you do. Which is why at the beginning of the verse he said qum. He could have Ya al-Mudathir anzir, and that would have served the purpose. Why qum? He can't do it sitting down? No, it has nothing to do with standing up. He can do it. He did a lot of it sitting down because a lot of the durus were done sitting down. So al-qiyam is not standing up, it's taking a stand, right? So why did he start with that? Because that's the first thing you need to do. The first thing, there has to be some ethical revolution or some degree of reform. And qiyam is a concept, a Quranic concept that is very much embedded in the topic or the idea of reform, of bringing forward important change, significant change that is required, ethical change and social change. And that requires people who are going to take a stand, who are no longer going to accept the status quo as is, whatever the status quo is, whatever, every timeline will have a different status quo. For example, Lut alayhi salam, he had to say no to a status quo that was sexual ethics, and Shu'aib had to stand up to a status quo that was more financial corruption. And Musa alayhi salam had to stand up against the status quo that was social and political corruption. So every prophet had a different reform. Like his qiyam was different. The qum for Musa alayhi salam was different than the qum for Isa alayhi salam, different for the Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Different because they were facing a different set of challenges and a different degree of corruption within their societies that they were living in. So number 1 is reform, is taking a stand. So that's the reformative piece. Number 2 is the religious piece, is the da'wah, is that you're going to take this, you're going to spread this message. فَأَنذِرْ, go and use this and warn people, explain to them. Start with the warning because that makes most sense. You start with the news that could potentially harm you before I follow up with the news that brings you benefit. We start with the stuff that has potential harm. So number 2, first one is that you take a stand. Number 2, you actually you spread the message. Number 3, وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ, and you live by a priority list of respecting and revering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ means that you're always going to prioritize the teachings of Allah. So you yourself, anzir without وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ is a disaster. If you spread the message but you don't live by it, then what's the point? Yeah, if you spread the message, you do indhar, you go and let people, but you don't have takbir, meaning you don't actually respect this message. You don't respect God, and you don't listen to the command. You don't follow them, but you'll tell other people to follow them. I see this all the time. We think it's cute and impressive that someone, he doesn't really follow Islam, but he loves Islam. I don't. I'm like, I prefer you not to. Either come on, either here or there. Like, this is not helpful. You sit there breaking every Islamic law by saying, oh, the Quran is beautiful and Allah and Islam is great. And but what's the point if you're living this like this? That doesn't help. Like, it's actually, it defeats the purpose. The claim that something is of beauty and of benefit, but you're not doing it, even though you have the intellectual capacity to recognize that, is a conundrum that actually is quite problematic. So number one, you have to take a stand for social reform. Number two, you have to actually spread the message. Number three, you have to live the message. وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ. Number four, you have to be able to represent the message. وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. You have to actually have cleanliness. So it's a physical choice you have to make in your appearance. So not only is it a stand that you take intellectually, a behavior that you do by spreading and by following, it's also an appearance, meaning even your clothing have to abide, not just your comprehension and your choices and your adherence to the commands. Even your clothing have to do that. So with وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, it's even an appearance command. وَالرُّجْزَ فَهْجُرْ, and everything that is low ethically you leave. You have to leave everything, ethically speaking. So, and these are where social ethics come in. I mean, everything that is seen to be low within the social ethics of a community, you have to stay away from. You can no longer be a part. You can't be a part of riba, and you can't be a part of gambling and alcohol. And these are things that any society see as low. These are not good places. Every city, even cities, don't believe in God at all. You drive downtown, you know the places, these are the slums, these are places where people of ethics and of high status, they don't come here. A politician who is a complete atheist should not be seen downtown in front of a strip club. Why? Because it's low. But if you don't believe in God at all, why is this a problem? Because we all know what's good and what's not. Because we all know what is rujz and what is not. We all know that there is an unspoken, agreed upon list of behaviors that are good, ma'ruf, and behaviors that are thumbs down, munkar. We all know them. Muslim, non-Muslim, whatever you are. That's why we're rujuz, which is the Quranic term to describe all of the thumbs down. Fahjur, you stay away from all that. You have to stay away from it. You cannot be Muslim and still engage in this stuff. So you have to cleanse yourself. So you're cleansing your clothing from physical filth, and you're cleansing yourself from moral filth. You have to get rid of that filth. وَلَا تَمْنُن تَسْتَكْثِرْ. A relationship-based command. When you're dealing with people, you give, you don't remind. I mean, you give selflessly. You're not looking for something in return. This is extremely important. وَلَا تَمْنُن تَسْتَكْثِرْ is a reminder that what you do, you don't do for anyone. You don't do expecting something in return. You don't do hoping that someone one day mentions you with in a positive way, or someone later on shows you loyalty or stands by you. No, you do it selflessly for the sake of Allah and only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the last one, لِرَبِّكَ فَاصْبِرْ, is the intrinsic one. And you'll do all of this in perseverance for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because no one else is worthy. No one else deserves you doing this and persevering down this path except Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll continue inshallah after Salat al-Isha. Barakallahu feekum.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
So this is the breakdown of these 7 commands. They cover intentions, they cover physical ethics, they cover appearance, they cover ways of life and purposes. So these 7 commands are very comprehensive. They cover everything. You don't really need, outside of these 7 commands, almost anything at all. Which is why I find it so interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the beginning of revelation, at the beginning of the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, gave him enough commands to suffice. Like he gave it all. He explained to the Prophet ﷺ everything he needed to know. Aside from the details of fiqh, aside from the details of al-ahkam al-shar'iyyah, which is something that came along with time, fiqh Islamically and religiously, and by, in terms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is something that has always changed historically anyways. Like meaning what the fiqh that Ibrahim had was different than the fiqh that Musa had, different than the fiqh that Isa had, different than the fiqh of any other prophet, and obviously different with the fiqh of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And so it's something that's important in Islam, but it's not the first thing that Islam taught, because it's not the most important piece. The most important piece is what we're listening to. The way of life, how you're going to represent and carry Islam to the world around you. Muzammil is how you carry Islam internally for you, how you grow from it and what you get out of it. It's an intrinsic issue. But Mudathir is how you carry it outwards. Qum, you have to take you have to take a stand for reform. Fa'anzir, you have to spread the message. Wa rabbaka fakabbir, you have to live by the message too. Like you have to prioritize the teachings as well, or else it's no, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ. You're going to tell people to do well. You're going to give them all this, and then you're not going to follow it yourself. وَأَنْتُمْ تَتْلُونَ الْكِتَابَ, and you recite the book in front of you. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, you have no minds at all. How does this work? وَرَبَّكَ وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, you have to be presentable. You have to also, even your clothing have to reflect what this message is about. Not just what you say and how you live, but also the way that you dress has to reflect it. وَرُجِزَ فَهْجُرْ, every ethic that is seen socially to be low, you must stay away from. You can no longer associate yourself with these type of behaviors. And rujiz is such an easy word because you don't really require an education to know what it is. You're just required to be living within a society. Everyone knows what rujiz is. Even people who aren't Muslim, even those who disagree with us. SubhanAllah, it's funny, even the stuff that we're told to celebrate. Ask a parent who has no belief. Is that what you wish for your son and daughter? Like, no, but if they do it, we're okay with it. That tells you right away this is not something that's desirable. Smoking. Even those who defend it, they don't want their kids to do it. Well, why? If it's so good, why don't give it to your child? Give it to a 6-year-old. Teach them how to light up. Why? Because we know it's not good. We all know what rujiz is. It's intrinsic. We all know what it is. We don't require we don't even need a faith to be told that zina and khamr and mukhaddirat and gambling and fornication, that this is low, that this is stuff that you stay away from. Even if societies have opened it up and allowed for it, they still know that it's not good. That's where you go find the people who are misbehaving. That's why you don't want to find your children there. You don't want to find yourself ending up there. People who are successful don't end up sitting at bars all day. They don't end up at strip clubs. That's not where they end. They end up somewhere very, very different. Because we know what's right and what's wrong. وَالرُّجِزَ فَهْجُرْ, and you have to stay away from the low life. You have to stay away from rujiz. وَلَا تَمْنُنْ تَسْتَكْثِرُ, and you give selflessly. The way you treat people, it cannot be transactional. The way you deal with people is not transactional. You don't give and then remind and expect in return and have, no, you just give and you walk away. You let people do whatever they want with what you gave them. Or don't give it to them. Or at least tell them that this is a transaction up front. If it's a transaction, you have to explain that it is. That this is not for free. I'm giving you this. I expect you to offer me 1, 2, or 3. And then they get to choose if they want to accept it from you or not. But for you to say this is for the sake of Allah, and then later on come and cash in and say I'm running for this, or I need your support on, I'm going to be elected for this, or I need you to help me with this, or can you get me, I talk to a connection. Why are you doing? Would, if they ever did a favor to you, they made a point of never asking you for a favor in their lives. They made a point of it, like never to ever come to you asking for a favor, so that you would never think that maybe you did that asking for something. Like they would need something, and you could help them, but they wouldn't ask you because they did something for you. They'd look for someone else because it would feel wrong. It would feel wrong. Yeah, it would feel wrong to accept from someone that I gave for the sake of Allah something, and they feel like it's something in return. وَلَا تَمْنُنْ تَسْتَكْثِرْ وَلِرَبِّكَ فَاصْبِرْ, and all of the perseverance that this is going to require. قُمْ and أَنذِرْ and كَبِّرْ and طَهِّرْ and أُهْجُرْ and لَا تَمْنُنْ, all these, they're going to require a lot of perseverance. They're not easy. They're not going to just happen. You're going to have to put in a lot of effort to make sure that they happen and continue to happen. You persevere for your Lord. وَلِرَبِّكَ, you do it for Him and only for Him. You don't do it for anyone else. No one else is worth doing it for. No one else deserves that from you. You don't owe that to anyone else. You only owe it to Him. He painted out the way of life. It was completely painted out. What you're going to do, how you're going to carry yourself, how you're going to behave, what your purpose is going to be, how you're going to present yourself, what you're going to stay away from, how you're going to do it with others, and why you're going to do it. All of the what, where, when, and why is all answered at the beginning of Surat Al-Mudathir. You're offered the full package. It almost makes you wonder what's left. How could the Quran be revealed for 23 years after this? Like, what was the Quran going to talk about for 23 years after this? How is this, these ayat in 2 lines out of a Quran that is going to be 614 pages with 15 lines a page? It's actually astonishing. Which is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no end for it. It keeps on giving. But these are the commands that I really think you should take some time and think about. Listen to them as if you are the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, listening to them for the first time at the beginning of the da'wah. Listen to them as if you were Sayyidina Ali, for example, who had just accepted Islam early on, had just memorized Surah Al-Fatiha, knows Iqra bismi rabbik, the first 5 verses, knows the first 16 verses or 20 verses of Surah Al-Qalam, maybe knows the first page of Al-Muzammil, maybe not yet. That's saying that this is the last of the 5, but it probably isn't. And then he's given, Ya ayyuha al-Mudathir, qum fa'andir, kabbir, tahir. Khalas. You wake up the next morning, he knows what to do. He knows his purpose, he knows what he stands for, he knows how he's going to live his life, he knows who he's going for, he knows how he's going to treat them, he knows what he's going to stay away from, he knows why he's doing it, how he's going to continue to do it. This is very valuable, to live life and there's clarity. You have clarity. Why am I doing this? رَبِّكَ فَاصْبِرْ. How am I treating them? You're not asking anything for anything in return. What do I stay away from? What am I going to live like? Kabbir. What's my purpose? Anzir. How do I see the world in general? Qum. You're going to always stand for social reform. How do I dress? You're going to cleanse yourself. You're going to even cleanse even your clothing are going to be clean. Not just your internals are going to be clean. Even your clothing is going to be clean. This tahara piece. It's absolutely fascinating. But it explains, in my opinion, exactly why there was such a transformation. It explains why it was easy for Quraysh to know who accepted Islam with the Prophet ﷺ, despite the fact they kept a lid on it. Despite the fact that they kept it a secret for 3 years, it wasn't hard for them to figure out who was becoming Muslim because things changed about them. They weren't the same type of people. Their behaviors were different. The way they carried themselves in their lives changed. So the change was obvious on these people. So it was hard to not know them. The Muslims stood out even later on in Medina when they were moving. You didn't always need to ask because it was obvious. The way they carried themselves, the way they behaved, there was something different. It became interesting. People wanted to come to Medina to see what was the fuss about. And they came and they saw something very different. These people have been taught a code of ethics. There's a certain system that they lived their lives by. This is the early stuff. This is what they had to listen to first. And they all had to agree. This is the buy-in. The first 5 surahs that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, that's the buy-in. If you don't like the first 5, then this is how you knew you're out. And you listen to the Fatiha, Iqra bismi rabbik Mudathir Muzammil. If you don't like it, you're out ala tul, because you don't have to waste time. Don't waste time, this is not for you. You had to be okay with these first 5. Right? This was your gateway into the deen. You're going to listen to all this stuff. You're okay with it? Yatfaddal. Not okay with it? You're going to go find something else to do with your life. Don't waste our time. Because this is the buy-in. And this is our buy-in. When we read these verses, by the way, we don't live by them. We read them, we memorize them as kids, but we don't live by them. Attempt to do this if you don't mind. Just for the sake of there being a practical aspect to some of these sessions. Attempt over the next week to live by these verses. Hold yourself to them every day. You've memorized them. I'm sure you know them, the first 7. If you haven't, well, this is a good opportunity to do so. You know the first 7. Hold yourself to these 7 commands every day. Ask yourself, قم فأنذر وربك فكبر ثيابك فطهر رجز فاهجر لا تمنن تستكثر لربك فاصبر. Ask yourself, am I living like all these? Am I missing any of them? Am I forgetting any of them? Is one of them not important to me and I just ignore it and I do differently? Or my priorities clear? Is the way I treat people clear? Is the way I present myself clear? Is my purpose clear? Is my stance clear? Is my message clear? Do I know why I'm doing it? I can tell you that if you try that, you'll find that it's interesting. It's an interesting experience to try. Where you just take some verses and try to live by them, because this is what they had to. This is all they had, by the way. There was a time where this was probably pretty much a third of the Quran. That's it. If the Prophet ﷺ said, sit down and do tafseer, He didn't really have, aside from Al-Fatiha, the beginning of Al-Alaq, maybe Al-Qalam in this. So there's not a lot to talk about. Like he didn't have an abundance of verses to quote and talk about. This was it. This became the focus. If you study, if you attend the Seerah sessions that I've taught in the past, or even the academic one the course that I'm doing, then we talk about something called the pause, the revelation pause. Futurul Wahi is what it's called in the books. After these 5 surahs, Al-Wahi stopped. Jibreel stopped showing up. He was coming a few days in a row. With اقرأ باسم ربك الفاتحة القلم المزمل والمدثر, and then gone. Most scholars point out that it was around 6 months. It's a long time. In 23 years, that's a reasonable portion of amount of time, and it caused the Prophet ﷺ a great deal of grief. And when the wahi came back, it was والضحى والليل ما ودعك ربك وما قلى. You haven't been forgotten. You haven't been neglected. He was given time, alayhi sallam, with the Sahaba to read these things, to read them slowly, to really think about these surahs, to understand what they're teaching, what they're expecting from you, what the buy-in is, what the way of life that came with it was going to be, so they could decide whether this is how they were going to carry themselves or not. And those who stuck with it, obviously, this is what they did. And those who didn't, they did Surat Al-Mudathir with that. In that case, it's powerful. It doesn't have an introduction. Surahs usually have introductions. Muzammil Al-Mudathir, no introduction. A call, ya ayyuha, and then immediately into business. Here are the commands. No, there's no, all right, as you know, you are Muslim now, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-qawi, and you should, no, ya qum, immediately, no in succession, with no explanation between one command and the other. So the Muzammil, there was more of space sometimes between the commands, a little bit of space, a little bit of explanation between them because they're intrinsic, they're for you. Here, nothing. Here's the code. It's like you're standing, it's like you're standing as a soldier, you're in the army. Here are your commands. قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ. Here, you memorize them. يلا امشي. Go. Now this is it. You've accepted all of this. خلاص قم الليل ورتل وتبتل واذكر واتخذه وكيلا and all that. So you did all that stuff. Now you're strong. You have that fuel. You understand who you are and you feel connected. All right, stand up straight and here's your mission. روح. And he did, alayhi salatu wasalam. He carried it. He got up and he carried it. And the Sahaba who believed him did the same, and they carried it, and they reached farther than he did, alayhi salatu wasalam. His reach, he was stuck within Arabia. They reached beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond. No one even knows what this place is. When I told a policeman who caught me on a scooter illegally driving and riding in Austin, and I told him I was from London, Canada, he said, and you're drunk too? I'm like, no, I'm not drunk. It's a city in Canada, and he wouldn't believe me. I had to show him my my driver's license. Oh, wallahi, London in Canada. It's like, no, London's in UK, you're drunk. I'm like, yeah, I don't drink, I London. No one knows this place. No one cares about it. And Islam found its way here. And masajid, a city with 7-8 masajid and nas. Why? Because those before us who listened to these words and actually lived with them, that's how powerful they can be. That's how powerful they can be for you if you take them as well and you decide that this is how I'm going to live my life. So those are the first 7 commands. Probably the first that ever were heard by the Sahaba. You could say, if you take the commands of Surah Al-Muzammil, they're all intrinsic. The one command in Surah Al-Qalam, not really a command, it's more just an encouragement of sabr, which is just and then the one in Surah Al-Alaq, اقرأ باسم ربك, is really not, it's not a fiqhi command, it was a mentality that this is how Islam is going to be built on. It's going to be built upon knowledge seeking and logic and rationale and critical thinking. It was like a principle. And then Surah Al-Fatiha doesn't have a command. It has a dua, fahdina. It's not really a command. It's you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But these were the first set of commands to the soldiers who stood shoulder by shoulder, listening to the Prophet alayhi salatu, ready to move. They were given their orders, and these were their orders. All right, we'll continue, inshallah. Ayat number 8. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فإذا نقر في الناقور فذلك يومئذ يوم عسير على الكافرين غير يسير ذرني ومن خلقت وحيدا. So let's stop here so I can continue, because if I keep on going, we have to keep on going. So immediately the verses after the commands, they turn out now into a different, you get a little bit of a different dynamic. They're going to talk about Yawm al-Qiyamah for a moment before they move on and start teaching us a few things. Why? Because none of the equations within Islam work without it. That's why Yawm al-Qiyamah is everywhere in the Quran. That's why any surah that's larger than half a page is going to have some reference to accountability and the Day of Judgment. Because nothing in our deen works. You remove the Day of Judgment out of it, then the whole, it's like Jenga. You move everything, just the whole structure comes crashing down. Because nothing works without your belief and acceptance of accountability. If you don't understand that we are going to be asked about how we used our lives and the time that we were granted, then it's very difficult to convince anyone to follow any command of any sort. Even if there is a God that's watching over us and cares about us, if we're gonna die and that's it, we're done, then what does it matter? And what's the point of it all? There's no point. There's really no point. So the commands themselves become almost empty if you remove this concept. And we know that as human beings today. That's why most people struggle with following any form of rule, ethical rule, or moral compass, without there being some degree of accountability. Law has tried to fill in for that accountability. Like the existence of a strong law has tried. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You have to have an intrinsic law that you hold yourself accountable to for some reason. The Arabs tried this. The Arabs were really good at this. How do you think Hatim al-Ta'i, for example, became so famous? Probably the most famous Arab to ever live, a man named Hatim. And this man just was so generous that the whole region knew about him. Persians knew about him. This is how generous this man was. But why did he do it? Because it wasn't a social, it wasn't an ethical code. He just decided that the way he was going to live his life is by doing things that will grant him an ongoing good reputation. That was going to be his goal. That's how he convinced himself of doing this one thing. It was only one ethic. The rest of them we don't know about. Like we don't know if he was, if he had other good ethics. We just know this one specifically. But that's how he tried to live his life. We know that doesn't work for the majority of people, or at least people who are mentally sane or sound. They don't care about people's opinions that much. They can't. Like they don't care. They can't care too much about what people think about them. Hatim did. He absolutely lived his life hoping that people would speak of his generosity, and they did. The man would slaughter his horse if someone asked him for food, which is insane because you can die in the desert if you don't have transportation. But that's how he decided he's going to do it, just because for that one goal. We know that doesn't work. That the Arabs tried to build ways of convincing themselves to be good people without Yawm al-Qiyamah, and they failed. They couldn't do it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every surah, Muzammil had the same thing, right? السماء منفطر به كان وعده مفعولا فكيف تتقون إن كفرتم يوما يجعل الولدان شيبا. So no matter how small, you'll find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings. And every surah that we have recited from the beginning of this juz', this cluster of surahs from Al-Mulk to Al-Mursalat that talk about representation of the deen, every surah has talked about Yawm al-Qiyamah. Not one has missed it yet. And none of them are. And we're going to make it to the end of Juz' Amma, and only 2 or 3 or 4 are going to do it. They're really short ones that only have maybe 3 lines. Right? And some of the 3-liners are going to be all Yawm al-Qiyamah. Like the whole surah is only going to be Yawm al-Qiyamah as well. Why? Because this you can't. The equation does not hold. It doesn't hold without the understanding of mortality and accountability. فَإِذَا نُقِرَ فِي النَّاقُورِ when the trumpet is blown. Naqur is the word that used for a trumpet or something that makes a sound that can be heard from afar. So it hits you. Naqr is when something. So it basically hits the eardrum and it moves it. So it's not a slow sound. It's a sound that's aggressive. فَإِذَا نُقِرْ when it's blown, or when the trumpet is blown and the sound comes out and it attacks the ear. فَإِذَا نُقِرَ فِي النَّاقُورِ and everyone goes dead. And no one's left. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks the angel of death to take the life of Nafikh al-Sur, of the one who blew into the horn. And then he asks him to take the life of Jibreel alayhi salam. Then he asks him to take his own life. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, as He always was. And then He grants life to the Nafikh al-Sur, to the one who blows into the horn. And He blows again, which is this one here. فَإِذَا نُقِرَ فِي النَّاقُورِ, He blows into the horn, and everything that has been dead, which is everything that has ever been alive, is dead, is brought back to life. فَذَلِكَ يَوْمَئِذٍ. So that moment where it's blown into the horn, on that day, يَوْمَئِذٍ يَوْمٌ عَسِيرٌ, that's a difficult day. It's a difficult day, regardless of who you are and what you did. It's a hard day. For Muslims, non-Muslims, for the Prophets, ﷺ, it's hard. They will find it difficult. Humanity will come to them at some point asking for their assistance. And they will all be standing there saying, Allahumma sallim, Allahumma sallim. Oh Allah, protect us. Allow us to get out of this unharmed. Oh Allah, grant us the ability to get through this without being punished. Sallim, just salam. We were looking for some degree of peace where there's no, out of fear of what happened that day, what's going to happen. فَذَلِكَ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَوْمٌ عَسِيرٌ. That's a difficult day. عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ, upon the disbelievers and those who were not grateful. غَيْرُ يَسِيرٌ is absolutely not easy. And he uses that term because he said, even though it's a difficult day, it may be easy for some people. But for these people, kafirin, غَيْرُ يَسِيرٌ, it's definitely not going to be easy. So it's a difficult day, but it may be easy for some people. Some people may not find it too difficult. But the day itself, and what it is difficult. Some people may find ease, others will not. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointed out, عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ غَيْرُ يَسِيرٌ. Upon the disbelievers, it's not easy. The scholars have induced from this that for other people, it will be easy. If it's for kafirin, غَيْرُ يَسِيرٌ, that means for others, it will be yasir. But that doesn't take away the fact that the day itself, with the nature of what it is a difficult day. But it'll be easier for others than it will be for certain groups. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, similarly to what He told him in Surat Al-Muzammil. Surat Al-Muzammil قال وذرني والمكذبين أولي النعمة ومهلهم قليلا. Leave, don't worry about the people who have the wealth and don't believe in you and are mistreating you. Leave them. I will take care of them. Meaning their punishment will come from me. You don't have to worry about what their outcome is going to look like, because the worry piece is bothersome. If you worry about the outcome of oppressors, if you see a mujrim, if you see a criminal, a war criminal, someone who's taken so many lives, people who are absolute savages, barbaric, Neanderthals who have no ethics at all, being granted Nobel Prizes for things that they did the opposite of. When you see that and it boils your blood, then remember, وَذَرْنِي وَالْمُكَذِّبِينَ أُولِي النَّعْمَةِ وَمَهِلْهُمْ قَلِيلًا إِنَّ لَدَيْنَا أَنْكَالًا وَجَحِيمًا. Those verses will Muzammil over your heart, so that you didn't lose it, because it's easy to lose your mind when you see something like this. It's going to bother you intrinsically, so it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to bother you, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take care. Here, it's different. ذَرْنِي وَمَنْ خَلَقْتُ وَحِيدًا is a little bit different. He's talking, so we'll go through the verses inshallah, and we'll talk about what the difference is. So, because here he says, وَذَرْنِي, leave me, وَمَنْ خَلَقْتُ وَحِيدًا, and the one whom I created alone. Whether he means that He created this person, He created him alone, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He didn't need any help. That's one interpretation, which is correct. Or he means wahida, as in leave me with him alone. Don't interfere. I will take. Or which is the second interpretation is correct. Or the third one is leave him alone. Wahid, I created him alone with no one else when I created it. He came out alone. He didn't come out with anyone else. He was alone when he was created. So all these interpretations are correct, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word, because however you understand it is fine. However you decide to understand all three, it's even better. But this is the beauty of the language, where it doesn't matter. And he's been telling the Prophet ﷺ, leave me. And وَمَنْ خَلَقْتُ وَحِيدًا, and the one who I created, leave us alone. And why? He'll explain. وَجَعَلْتُ لَهُ مَالًا مَمْدُودًا وَبَنِينَ شُهُودًا وَمَهَّدتُّ لَهُ تَمْهِيدًا ثُمَّ يَطْمَعُ أَنْ أَزِيدَ كَلَّا إِنَّهُ كَانَ لِآيَاتِنَا عَنِيدًا سَأُرْهِقُهُ صَعُودًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلْتُ لَهُ مَالًا مَمْدُودًا, and I provided for him wealth that was stretched out in front of him. in space and time. He had a lot of it, and he had a lot of it for a long time. مَالًا مَمْدُودًا وَبَنِينَ شُهُودًا. And I granted him children, male and female, that bore witness of my generosity to him, who were testifiers of, who were evidence or examples of my generosity with him. Shuhud. Everyone could see that this man was treated well in his life. He was granted wealth, and he was granted children that grew up to be healthy and strong, and granted him social status and strength. So this verse here, or these verses, could be understood generically, for sure. And you could easily understand them in a general way and apply them generally as well, no problem. And you should always do that with the verses of the Quran. Always understand them generally first. And then if there's a sabab nuzul, if there's a reason or a co-existing reason for a revelation, then you understand the story with it to add a dimension to it. So the sabab nuzul for this ayah, is, whom we think is most likely being addressed here, is Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, right? The father of Sayyidina Khalid radiallahu anhu. And Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira by far was the top chieftain of Quraysh. If you had to sequence or make a list of the chiefs of Quraysh, the number one, command number two, then number one is going to be undisputedly Al-Walid. And then after that you can dispute on Abu al-Hakam ibn Hisham, and Al-As ibn Wa'il, and Utbah ibn Rabi'a, and whoever else you want, Abu Sufyan. You can sit down and argue who you think, but it's always Al-Walid. For many reasons, Al-Walid was at the time was the head name, because a lot of the people who were higher had passed away. A lot of people had died at that point, and Al-Walid was one of the eldest who was left, and he was one of the richest, and he was from one of the biggest tribes in Mecca. He had some of the biggest support, and he had been there for important moments. So Al-Walid was one of the people who rebuilt the Kaaba. He was the leader of the efforts of rebuilding the Kaaba before the Prophet ﷺ's bi'tha. If you remember, he was there for that in his 30s when they rebuilt the Kaaba. He was the person to hit the first axe at the Kaaba. He took upon himself to do that. He put the money together. He basically led the whole effort. A number of peace treaties after certain wars, he led the effort in actually putting them together. He is one of the people who continued to organize the merchant gatherings and Suq Iqad and other stuff similar. So Al-Walid Mughira had a lot of pull in Mecca, and he was very highly respected. And he left a lot of the admin work for others. So sometimes you're a leader, but you're such a leader to the point like you're so high up that you don't even need to get involved in the day-to-day stuff. He doesn't attend the meetings of Dar al-Nadwa. Now, he doesn't attend those meetings. Those meetings are for Abu Jahl and these people to talk about what needs to be done in Mecca. If he wants to give a law, he'll come and tell people. if they need him, they'll come and ask for his advice, because he's left for the strategic thinking type of thing. So that's how he was. And he didn't live for very long. He passed away before the Prophet ﷺ left Mecca, and he never accepted Islam, unfortunately. And he was a part of a lot of the, and you'll run into people like that. You'll run into the gurus, the godfathers of the world. You'll run into them in life. You'll have a few experiences with someone. If you get a bit successful and you go to a place, one of them will call you over, get to know you. And you'll find out that they're like that, not too difficultly. That this person may not be the face of the organization or the face of the group, but he is definitely the brains. And no one breaks his word. And if you don't kiss the ring, then you're out. Right? So you'll learn that quickly. And you have to choose at one point. Don't be stupid like me and not even figure it out and then get kicked out and figure out later. But figure out earlier, so that if you choose not to kiss the ring, then you made a conscious choice not to do it, not that you didn't figure it out, you were too late figuring it out, because you may like the ring and you'll be happy with it. But this is a very known part. So Al-Walid was one of those people. He is someone who no one dared cross, not in Mecca, not anywhere. And the known story of Uthman ibn Mad'un, and I'll end with that, inshallah. And we'll talk about these verses a little bit. I need some time to explain them, and they're very, very powerful. They're really important. The story is very meaningful, and it has an important connection to the theme of the surah, which is how we're going to behave outwards, how we're going to carry the message. It's very connected to that. And I'll give you the example. Uthman ibn Mad'un, he was Al-Walid's nephew, or second nephew or something. When he came back from Al-Habasha later on, Uthman went to the people who went to Habasha, but he came back with a group, or maybe 30 people, who came back early because they had heard a rumor that the people of Mecca have accepted Islam and did sujood and all that stuff when the Surat Al-Najm was revealed. And amongst them was Uthman ibn Affan and Ruqayya bint Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam and other people. And Uthman ibn Affan was amongst them. He came back, found out it was all a lie, and he was captured. He was going to be harmed, and then Walid ibn Mughira offered him, said, he is fi jiwari, he is my, he is under my wing. So people left him alone. Now Uthman would walk around watching all of the people who came back with him being captured and tortured and put in jails and mistreated, and he was walking around absolutely free. Like no one was touching him at all. And he actually became upset with that. He didn't want to be different than all his brothers and sisters. He wanted to be like everyone else. He didn't feel like this was fair, that why is he spared from what's happening to his brothers and sisters he's living with them. He can't do anything about it, but he's absolutely spared. No one touches him. Why? Because he's Fiji Wadi al-Walid. So he decided that he didn't like this. So there was a gathering for poetry in front of the Kaaba. It was Labid Rabi'a, the great poet, one of the Ashab al-Mu'allaqat, for those who see them as 10. And he was standing there and he was giving his poetry. And whenever a poet gives poetry, everyone quiets down and listens. So he was saying, "Ala kullu shay'in ma khala Allah batilu." Everything aside from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is false. So he would scream out, he would yell out, "And sadaqt, this is true." So people would look at him. What are you doing? It's you don't speak out during poetry oration at all. So he spoke out, and everyone looked at him like, and then the poet continues, وَكُلُّ نَعِيمٍ لَا مَحَالَةَ زَائِلُ, and every ease is one day going to end. فَقَالَ بَاطِل فَإِنَّ نَعِيمَ الْجَنَّةِ لَا يَزُولُ. He's picking a fight. He understands poetry. Like, no, that's not true. نَعِيمَ الْجَنَّةِ is forever. So look at it again. Like, يا أخي, and Labid says, هَكَذَا يُصْنَعُ بِشُعَرَائِكُمْ يَا قُرَيْشِ. And Labid says, this is how your poets are being treated now in Mecca. And they said, دَعْهُ فَإِنَّهُ فِي جِوَارِ الْوَلِيدِ. You have to leave him. We can't do anything to him. Walid offered him his. No one can. I understand. This is the point of the story. Is that this is a norm where police would remove this person and punish him because it's. But they said, well, we can't do anything for you. Yes, you're the biggest poet in the land, but this man is in the protection of Al-Walid. No, we can't say anything. And Labid said, okay, and continued. This is how he was known. Like when Labid heard that, he's in his protection. Nope. Go ahead. And he kept on giving his poetry, no problem. But Uthman was waiting for this to be said. And he said, رَدَدْتُ عَلَيْهِ جِوَارَهُ. I don't want his protection. They beat him half dead. When he said that, when he said, رَدَدْتُ عَلَيْهِ جِوَارَهُ, I don't want his protection, they beat him half dead. They beat him until they popped his eye. That's how, understand the difference, the contrast here? Like, right? Go ahead, do what you want. We don't dare cross Al-Walid. Oh, I'm not in his protection anymore. No questions asked. They beat him unconscious, popped his eye. He wakes up in his own blood with an eye that doesn't see anymore. And he asks, and Al-Walid walks by, strolls by. He said, أَلَا إِنَّكَ كُنْتَ يَا ابْنَ أَخِي فِي جِوَارٍ عَزِيزٍ عَنْ هَذَا. Indeed, you were within a protection that would not allow something like this to happen for you. Why did you? So he answered him, Sayyidina Uthman, فقال ألا إن عيني المفقوءة ألا إن عيني السليمة لفي شوق إلى ما أصاب أختها في سبيل الله. So he said, indeed, my good eye can't wait to suffer what its sister did for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Al-Walid walked by and he went to the Prophet alayhi sallam, Sayyidina Uthman, فمسح على وجهه صلى الله عليه وسلم, in his eye, and he saw again. He didn't live his life with one eye. He saw with both eyes, with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam's hand on his eye alayhi salatu wasalam. The point was that this is how Al-Walid was seen. This is his character. He was of that. Well, why is this ayat ذَرْنِي وَمَنْ خَلَقْتُ وَحِيدًا? Because he was offered an opportunity. Al-Walid was offered an opportunity. He was a leader, he was a guru, he was a godfather, he was someone who sat behind, he was the head. If he decided that what the Prophet ﷺ was doing was worth listening to, the story of Seerah today would be very different. The story of Seerah would be completely different. I would have to go back and relearn everything because everything I'm telling you is wrong. He had that opportunity, but he didn't take it. And that's why this story is here. When it comes to influence, when it comes to making a difference, Al-Walid was given an opportunity. The Quran was so powerful, the words they were hearing from him, the teachings, confused everyone. Abu al-Hakam ibn Hisham, they were all confused. They didn't know what to do. They didn't like it because it was threatening their status, threatening their, the norm, the status quo, the wealth, everything. It was threatening everything. But ya akhi, what he's saying is just, This is, يعني, so they get so confused that they end up going to him. They all go back to the guru. They go back to the Godfather. And they say, what do we do? We don't know what to do. You're the leaders, you do it. I know, we're the leader. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to deal with this. This is, what do we do? So he said, leave me to think. Hence the story that we have. So we'll continue that inshallah next week. سبحانك وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه جزاكم الله خير بارك الله فيكم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.